I would say that investigative journalism is usually long-form journalism about subjects that matter to society, and that the publication can often have an impact and help make the world a better place. Over the last 150 years, the same themes come up over and over again. So the environment, police brutality, military brutality, labor issues, things like slavery and trafficking, development journalism, or not really development journalism, but rural affairs, women's rights, in certain periods anti-colonialism, consumer safety, health. I would say those are some of the key subjects. War, of course, government. Those are some of the key subjects that journalists have written about. Of course, now with the Panama Papers, we're seeing this new tendency of enormous leaks, and I think that there's sort of a global move for more transparency and a movement for tax avoidance. So those are some of the subjects that people are writing about now, more than probably they were writing about 100 years ago. I think the most exciting thing right now are the cross-border partnerships. So groups like the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, bringing together a couple hundred journalists to work on the Panama Papers. They also worked on LuxLeaks. You know, as Paul Radu says from the Organization for Crime and Corruption Reporting, crime doesn't stop at the borders. Why should journalism? So I think cross-border investigations, which are funded partly by philanthropy and foundations and partly helps with digital technology and big data, is by far the most exciting development of the last few years. Well, I think clearly with social media now and the ability to disseminate lots of information very, very quickly, privacy is going to continue to be a problem. It didn't matter before if you sort of knew what your neighbor knew what you were doing, but now obviously information about people's personal lives can spread around the world very quickly. So I think there's going to be continued debates about what privacy means, about surveillance, and clearly there are different standards all over the world. So the U.S. has very different legal standards from Europe and from other countries. So I think it's going to continue to be contested and discussed over the coming years. There's a lot of different ways to measure impact, and I think we almost would need a long time to discuss it. But clearly, one way is to look at whether there's a policy effect, policy change, whether someone's gone to jail, whether a new law has been passed, whether money's been raised. And then there's also a lot of things that people are doing now, looking at reach, looking at engagement, looking at how long people are spending on the website, looking at how the language changes, looking at the social media response. So there's a lot of different metrics that people are looking at the moment. But I still think, again, based on history, that the full effect of investigative journalism can take years to figure out. You can't sort of expect something to change overnight. Lots of things will, but sometimes it's more about how societies change their ideas. And journalism can help that, and it's sometimes more of a long-term process. Nowadays, for journalists, it's really important to have great multimedia skills, so video and audio. I think that obviously data is continuing to be important. The way people consume information and also present information is constantly evolving. A newspaper today looks very different from 30 years ago or 50 years ago, totally different from 200 years ago. So I think the next generation is defining what it's going to look like.